Russia thought it had figured out Ukraine, flood the skies with cheap drones, hundreds of them, every single night, overwhelm the air defenses, drain Ukraine's missile stockpiles, break the infrastructure, break the people, grind them down. It was a brutally simple strategy. And for a while, it was working. But Ukraine just did something that nobody saw coming. Not Russia, not NATO, not the Pentagon, not a single defense analyst sitting in a comfortable office in Washington or Brussels. They took a plane older than most of the people flying it, a plane that was never designed for combat, a plane that most militaries on Earth would have scrapped decades ago, sold for parts, or left rusting on a forgotten airstrip, and they turned it into one of the most effective drone-killing machines operating in any war zone on the planet right now. And Russia, with all its S-400 batteries, its cruise missiles, its billion-dollar defense contracts, has absolutely no answer for it. Stay with us. Because what Ukraine has built here is going to change the way every military on Earth thinks about air defense. And it started with a plane from 1969. You are watching States News. We do not just read you the headlines. We tell you what is actually happening, with depth, with data, and with the full strategic picture. If you are new here, subscribe right now and turn on notifications. This is exactly the kind of story we exist to tell. Let us start with the problem, because to understand how extraordinary Ukraine's solution is, you first need to understand just how enormous the threat has become. Russia is producing Shahed drones, the Iranian-designed kamikaze UAVs that have become Moscow's weapon of choice against Ukrainian cities, power plants, and water infrastructure at a rate of approximately 5,000 per month. 5,000 every single month. And that number is not staying flat. Russia has announced plans to nearly triple that production rate, which would push monthly output to 15,000 or more. That is 500 drones per day, more than 20 per hour, every hour, around the clock. According to analysis published by Inside Unmanned Systems, by early 2026, Russia had launched more than 54,000 Shahed-type drones during the course of the conflict. 54,000. That is not a campaign. That is an industrial air war. And it places Ukraine's air defense system under a level of sustained pressure that almost no military doctrine in history has been designed to absorb. Now think about what it cost Ukraine to stop them using conventional methods. A standard surface-to-air missile, the kind Ukraine has been using since the earliest days of the war, costs anywhere from $500,000 to over $1 million per shot. A Shahed drone costs Russia somewhere between $20,000 and $50,000 to build and launch. That math does not work. That math has never worked. If Ukraine fires $1 million missile every time Russia launches a $50,000 drone, Russia wins the war without ever needing to win a single battle. It simply bankrupts Ukraine one intercept at a time. Ukraine's military commanders understood this asymmetry early. And instead of simply asking Western partners for more expensive missiles to keep burning through, they started thinking about the problem differently. They asked a different question. Not how do we shoot down more drones, but how do we shoot down more drones for less money, faster, more reliably, in greater numbers with assets we already have? That question led to a breakthrough that is rewriting the rules of modern air defense. And the unlikely hero at the center of it all is a small twin-engine turboprop aircraft that took its first flight 57 years ago, the Antonov An-28. If you have never heard of it, you are not alone. This is not a famous aircraft. It is not a fighter jet, not a stealth bomber, not even remotely glamorous. It is a short-range utility transport, the kind of plane that has spent most of its operational life carrying cargo, mail, and small numbers of passengers between remote airstrips in places where bigger aircraft simply cannot land. Close to 200 were built over the years. Today, barely a dozen remain operational anywhere in the world, a few in commercial service in Russia, Armenia, and Tajikistan, a handful in military use in Georgia, Tanzania, and Ukraine. There is nothing about the An-28's original design specification that suggests weapons. No hard points for missiles, no gun mounts, no fire control systems, no targeting radar, just a small, practical, reliable little aircraft that does its job quietly and without drama. And that is precisely what makes what Ukraine has done with it so extraordinary. Because when Ukraine's military engineers looked at the An-28, they did not see a boring old utility plane. They saw a platform. They saw a solution. They saw a way to take the fight to Russia's drones that nobody else had thought of, because nobody else was desperate enough or creative enough to look at a 1969 cargo plane and think, this could be a weapon. This is what separates Ukraine's military from almost every other fighting force on earth right now. Not just its courage, not just its will to fight, its willingness to look at assets that everyone else has written off and ask what they can actually do. Ukraine does not waste anything. It does not retire assets simply because they are old or because they were not designed for combat. It repurposes, it rebuilds, it reimagines, and in doing so, it keeps finding ways to punch far above its weight against a military machine that has more of almost everything. More tanks, more missiles, more bombs, more drones, more men. When you are facing an opponent like that, you cannot afford to let a single asset go to waste. The world got its first glimpse of what Ukraine had done with the An-28 in February 2026. As reported by the War Zone and independently verified by Knoll reports, footage aired on the French television channel TF1 showed one of these aircraft on an active nighttime combat mission. And what viewers saw mounted to its cabin door was something nobody expected: a 6-barreled Gatling-type minigun, specifically an American-made M134 minigun, one of the most capable rotary weapons ever built. Let us talk about what that minigun actually does. The numbers are staggering. The M134 is capable of firing between 3,000 and 6,000 rounds per minute. That is 50 to 100 bullets every single second. It has a proven combat record in aerial applications going back to the Vietnam War, where it was standard equipment on the AC-47 Spooky gunship. Historically, it was used to shred targets on the ground. Ukraine had a completely different idea. Ukraine pointed it at the sky. As reported by the New York Times in their May 2026 feature on the aircraft and confirmed independently by United 24 Media and Drone XL, the TF1 footage revealed something else that stopped military analysts in their tracks. Under the An-28's cockpit, the crew had painted kill markings, small silhouettes of Shahed and Iran-type long-range attack drones, one silhouette for every confirmed kill. At the time TF1 filmed it, there were 115 of them, 2 painted yellow believed to signify an especially high kill count from those specific engagements. By the time the New York Times published its full report in May 2026, the tally had climbed to 222 confirmed drone kills using the minigun alone. And critically, as the New York Times noted, each interception using the M134 costs roughly $500 in ammunition, not $500,000. $500. Against a target that costs Russia up to $50,000 to produce and launch. That is a cost exchange ratio of up to 100 to 1 in Ukraine's favor. Let that number settle. But here is where we need to talk about the people behind those numbers, because this is not a professional military unit operating out of a hardened airbase with full logistical support. The An-28's crew consists entirely of civilian volunteers, men who are exempt from conventional military conscription but chose of their own accord to climb into an unarmored, uncamouflaged Soviet-era turboprop and fly night combat missions over a country being attacked by drones now increasingly equipped with air-to-air missiles. As Drone XL reported, citing Ukrainian pilot and public volunteer documenter Timur Fatkulin, the crew operates under a specific operational discipline. Fatkulin, who has become the public face of several of Ukraine's most extraordinary improvised aviation programs, stated on camera that the rule is simple: shoot the drone down over unpopulated terrain. Some intercepts require the crew to shadow a Shahed for 5 to 7 minutes, accompanying it across the sky until it clears a residential area before engaging. That kind of judgment, that discipline, applied under combat conditions at night from an unarmored aircraft, it speaks to something that no military budget can procure directly. It speaks to character. Now, let us talk about how the crew actually operates, because the system they have built is more sophisticated than you might expect. The An-28 does not fly blind. It is in constant communication with ground-based air defense controllers who monitor Ukrainian airspace in real time, tracking the movement of incoming Russian drone swarms and directing the aircraft to intercept corridors. On board, each member of the 4-person crew has a specific role. There is a camera operator monitoring a live infrared feed. scanning the surrounding sky for the heat signatures of incoming UAVs. There is the pilot, maneuvering to the crew's directions. There is a dedicated gunner equipped with night vision goggles whose sole function is to engage targets the moment they enter range. And there is a fourth crew member handling support tasks, clearing jams, managing ammunition, providing additional observation. Together, they have built a combat capability from almost nothing. And then Ukraine made it even better. In April 2026, Fat Cullen shared new footage of the An-28, and what was mounted on it had changed dramatically. As first reported by the War Zone on April 24th and confirmed by Militarny and SOFX, the aircraft had been fitted with underwing hardpoints, structural mounting pylons attached to each wing, carrying two different types of interceptor drone. The An-28 had been transformed from a gunship into an airborne drone launching platform, the world's first dedicated drone hunting aircraft to also carry and deploy drone interceptors in flight. The two systems now confirmed operationally on the An-28 are the Skyfall P-1-Sun and the Merops AS-3 Surveyor, and they represent two very different tools built to solve the same problem. Let us start with the P-1-Sun, because this interceptor is one of Ukraine's most remarkable industrial achievements of the entire war. Built by Ukrainian defense technology firm Skyfall on a modular, partially three-dimensionally printed airframe, the P-1-Sun is small, light, and extraordinarily fast. At cruise, it moves at around 300 kilometers per hour. When closing on a target, it can push to 450 kilometers per hour, approximately 280 miles per hour. As confirmed by Militarny and Tech Radar, it can operate at altitudes up to 16,400 feet, giving it a ceiling above most Shahed cruise profiles, and it carries a 14-minute flight endurance at full payload. The modular 3D printed airframe means it can be produced rapidly at scale without the complex tooling requirements of conventional aerospace manufacturing. And here is the number that changes everything. The P-1-Sun costs approximately $1,000 per unit. $1,000. Russia's Shahed drones cost between $20,000 and $50,000 each. Every time a P-1-Sun destroys a Shahed, Ukraine is winning a financial battle by a margin of 20-1 or 50-1, depending on the variant. As Hanna Hvozdyar, advisor to Ukraine's defense minister Mikhailo Fedorov, disclosed at the European Business Summit, and as reported by SOFX and Euromaidan Press, P-1-Sun interceptors destroyed more than 3,000 Russian Shaheds in 2026 alone, with an average all-in cost per kill of around $3,000. Skyfall, according to the same reporting, is currently manufacturing at 2 to 3 times Ukraine's domestic demand and is already positioning itself as an exporter to the United States and Gulf states. The second interceptor on the An-28's hardpoints is the Merops AS-3 Surveyor, and this one has a story that reaches far beyond Ukraine's borders. Developed by Perennial Autonomy, a California-based defense company formerly known as Project Eagle, the AS-3 was designed for a different threat profile than the P-1-Sun. Where the P-1-Sun is optimized for speed and minimal cost, the AS-3 was built to handle tougher, more capable Russian UAVs, including the newer jet-powered Geran-3 variants that are too fast for the minigun to reliably engage. The AS-3 Surveyor carries a 2-kilogram explosive warhead, detonating either on direct impact or by proximity fuse, close enough to shred a target with the blast radius. It reaches top speeds of approximately 280 kilometers per hour. Its operational range extends to about 20 kilometers, roughly 12.5 miles. What makes it especially formidable is its onboard artificial intelligence guidance system, which allows the drone to track and intercept targets completely autonomously without any human input in the control loop, using onboard sensors to classify threats and execute the engagement independently. The AS-3's combat record is extraordinary. As reported by Inside Unmanned Systems and confirmed by Army Recognition, Ukrainian forces first deployed Merops against Russian Shaheds in June 2024. By November 2025, more than 1,000 confirmed intercepts had been logged through Ukraine's Mission Control Battlefield Management System. By early 2026, Business Insider was reporting nearly 1,900 successful intercepts and a claimed success rate of approximately 95% against Shahed-type targets. Brigadier General Curtis King, commanding general of the United States Army's 10th Air and Missile Defense Command, told reporters at a live-fire training exercise in Nowa Deba, Poland, in November 2025, that the MIROP system was, in his words, very lethal and enables us to kill effectively and at a much lower cost. The international adoption of this system is now accelerating. As reported by Defense News in May 2026, Lithuania became the latest NATO member to purchase the MIROP system, acquiring 48 interceptors on April 22nd through an emergency procurement without competitive bidding, a process that Army Secretary Dan Driscoll told congressional lawmakers had taken just 8 days from decision to deployment. 8 days. As Defense News noted, that is a pace that would previously have taken years under normal Pentagon procurement timelines. Poland and Romania have also fielded the system along NATO's eastern flank. And as Inside Unmanned Systems reported, the U.S. Army has now deployed MIROPs to the Middle East to counter the Iranian Shahed threat there, directly applying the cost exchange logic first proven in Ukrainian airspace to a second theater of war. Ukraine's battlefield laboratory has, in other words, produced a weapon system that the most powerful military alliance in human history is now adopting at emergency speed. Now let us pause there for a moment, because we want to make sure you are getting every update as this story develops. Hit subscribe to States News right now if you have not already. Turn on notifications. This is a story that is evolving week by week, and the developments we are about to walk through, the strategic implications, the future projections, what this means for NATO and for the future of warfare, these are exactly the kinds of analysis we deliver in depth every single week. Now let us talk about why launching interceptors from an airborne platform is so much more effective than launching them from the ground, because the technical advantages here are genuinely profound and they are worth walking through carefully. The first advantage is altitude. When an interceptor launches from the ground, it faces an immediate physics problem. A Shahed drone cruising toward a Ukrainian city is flying at several thousand feet. A ground-launched interceptor must first spend precious seconds, sometimes precious minutes, climbing to that altitude before it can even begin its intercept run. That climb consumes battery power, reduces available speed, and shrinks the intercept window. The N-28 eliminates this entirely. The aircraft is already airborne, already at altitude, already in the operational zone where the threat is moving. When ground controllers call in a drone contact and the camera operator acquires a heat signature on the infrared display, the crew releases an interceptor that is already at engagement altitude and needs only seconds to cover the distance to its target. As Tech Radar reported, launching from altitude also gives the interceptor additional kinetic energy, extending its effective range and improving its closing speed against faster targets. The April 2026 footage released by Fat Cullen shows this precisely. A P-1-Sun leaves the hardpoint, covers the distance to a Shahed, detonates, and the Russian drone is gone. The entire engagement takes seconds. The second advantage is loiter time. Interceptor drones by design are short-lived. They are fast and lethal, but they are not endurance machines. Most can only remain in the air for minutes before exhausting their power supply. That means Ukraine cannot simply launch a swarm of interceptors and let them patrol an area waiting for threats to appear. They must be deployed reactively, which means there is always a race against time once a contact is detected. The An-28 solves this problem completely. As a real aircraft with genuine fuel tanks, it can remain on station over a critical piece of infrastructure, a power plant, a dam, a railway hub, for hours at a stretch, providing a standing combat air patrol capability that previously only existed in the context of expensive fighter jets. Now it is provided by a modified cargo plane carrying $1,000 drones. The third advantage is versatility. The hardpoints Ukraine added to the N-28 are not fixed to any specific weapon type. As reported by the War Zone and confirmed by Ukraine today, the aircraft carries at least 3 mounting points under each wing, space for up to 6 interceptors per sortie in the current configuration. Depending on the expected threat, crews can mix P-1-Sun interceptors for high-volume Shahed attacks with AS-3 surveyors for faster or more capable targets. Ukraine's engineers could theoretically expand the platform further still, adding rocket pods, additional gun mounts, or entirely new interceptor types as they are developed and fielded. The platform grows with the threat. The fourth advantage, perhaps the most practically important in the context of this war, is the N-28's short takeoff and landing capability. This aircraft was designed to operate from small, unprepared airstrips. It does not need a long runway. It does not need a major air base with hardened infrastructure. It can operate from a field, a stretch of road, or a makeshift strip carved out of countryside. In a country where Russian missile strikes have damaged or destroyed many primary military airfields, that capability is not a convenience. It is a strategic necessity. Ukraine can base its N-28s almost anywhere, which means it can respond to drone threats almost anywhere. And now consider the compound effect of all of this together. The minigun roll, $500 per kill, up to 6,000 rounds per minute, 222 confirmed kills and climbing. The interceptor drone roll, $1,000 per P-1 Sun enabling beyond visual range engagements against jet-powered Giron, 3 variants the minigun cannot reach, both modes operating simultaneously from the same platform. As Drone XL's analysis noted, quoting Fat Cullen directly, the P-1 Sun can be thought of as a cheap air-to-air missile, a description that reframes the entire concept. Ukraine has not built a weapons system. It has created a new category of weapon, an airborne, multimodal, low-cost, high-lethality counter-drone platform built from a 1969 cargo aircraft and commercially available components, operated by civilian volunteers, and fielded in active combat faster than most nations can complete an acquisition study. The United States military, with the largest defense budget in human history, does not currently operate an equivalent system. There is no operational U.S. platform that combines airborne loiter, minigun direct fire, and air-launched interceptor capability in a single cost-effective package the way the An-28 now does. Think about what that means. A country fighting for its survival with a fraction of the resources of any major power has out-innovated the most powerful military establishment on Earth in one of the most critical areas of 21st century warfare. Now, zoom out, because the An-28 does not exist in isolation. It is one element in a rapidly evolving, increasingly layered air defense ecosystem that Ukraine is building in real time, under fire, at extraordinary speed. Ukraine's air defense network today looks almost nothing like it did 3 years ago. It is not just radar systems and surface-to-air missile batteries anymore. It is a multi-layered architecture that combines mobile ground-based interceptor units, AI-powered autonomous turrets capable of targeting and engaging drones without human input, directed energy systems including microwave emitters capable of disrupting drone electronics without firing a round, and now airborne launch platforms like the An-28. All of these systems feed data to centralized ground controllers coordinating the defense in real time through Ukraine's Mission Control Battlefield Management System. The layers reinforce each other. Each one handles what the others cannot. The interceptor drone layer has become particularly critical, not just because interceptors are cheap and fast, but because they allow Ukraine to preserve its most valuable and hardest to replace assets, its long-range surface-to-air missiles, for the threats that actually require them. When a P-1 Sun takes down a Shahed for $1,000, Ukraine does not need to fire a Patriot interceptor that costs $2 million. That Patriot stays in the launcher, ready for the ballistic warhead or the cruise missile that actually warrants the expense. As reported by Defense News in May 2026, Ukrainian interceptors destroyed more than 70% of Shaheds approaching Kyiv in recent months, freeing scarce Patriot rounds for their intended role. Ukraine is also continuously diversifying the types of interceptors it deploys. The P-1 Sun, the Sting, the Zarov-8, a quadrator interceptor using advanced AI to hunt and destroy Shaheds completely autonomously. Each system has different characteristics, different operational profiles, different strengths. Russia cannot build a single electronic or physical countermeasure that defeats all of them simultaneously. They are different systems, they are different problems, and they are all operational at the same time. Ukraine is also expanding the concept of the airborne launch platform itself. As defense analysts cited by multiple outlets have noted, Ukraine is already exploring applications of the same principle to other aircraft, transport helicopters, Yakovlev Yak-52 trainer aircraft, and potential unmanned mothership platforms that could carry and deploy interceptors in contested airspace without putting crew at risk at all. The trajectory here is clear. Ukraine is building a distributed, layered, multi-platform airborne interceptor capability that has no direct precedent in the history of air defense. And it is doing it not in a peacetime laboratory, but in the middle of the largest drone campaign in the history of warfare. And on the UK side, as confirmed by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry in November 2025, Ukraine and Britain have signed a licensing agreement for large-scale domestic British production of Ukrainian interceptor drones, with plans to manufacture several thousand units per month in the United Kingdom for delivery to Ukrainian air defense. That agreement means Ukrainian interceptor drone technology is now being industrialized by a NATO member inside NATO territory. The transfer of battlefield innovation into alliance-wide capability is happening in real time. Ukraine figured it out first. With a converted cargo plane that most air forces would have sent to a museum operated by civilian volunteers carrying dollar store drones, Ukraine figured it out first. And what started with 115 silhouettes painted on the nose of an old N-28 has become something that Army secretaries testify about before Congress and that NATO allies purchase in emergency procurement rounds. As of the latest reporting in May 2026, the An-28 has logged 222 confirmed kills with the minigun. The interceptor drone kill count is still being compiled and has not been publicly totaled. Skyfall's P-1-Sun alone has destroyed more than 3,000 Russian drones since the start of 2026 across all platforms. The Merops AS-3 has logged nearly 1,900 intercepts in Ukraine. These numbers are not static. They are growing every night. Russia sent 54,000 drones to break Ukraine's will. Ukraine responded by turning a 1969 turboprop into an airborne drone hunting platform that the Pentagon is now studying to replicate. If that is not one of the most remarkable feats of military innovation in modern history, it is difficult to know what would qualify. And here is the final thought worth sitting with. Every transformation in the history of warfare, from the stirrup to the tank to the aircraft carrier, was initially dismissed by the established powers until it was too late to ignore. The drone swarm is already past that point. The airborne interceptor launched from a repurposed civilian aircraft is the answer that emerged from necessity, from ingenuity, from the refusal to accept that the only solutions are the ones that come from billion-dollar procurement budgets. Ukraine did not ask for permission to build this. It just built it, and the world is now catching up. You are watching States News. If this kind of deep dive analysis is what you come here for, make sure you are subscribed and have notifications on. Every week, we break down the stories behind the headlines with the data, the context, and the strategic framework they deserve. Leave us a comment below. We want to know what you think. Is the airborne interceptor platform concept something you believe Western militaries will adopt at scale? Can Ukraine sustain this pace of innovation as Russia escalates further? And what does this model mean for the future of air defense globally? The discussion is in the comments. We read every one. We will, of course, keep you updated as the story develops. From the production lines in Kyiv to the procurement halls in Washington to the airstrip somewhere in Ukraine, where a 4-person civilian crew is loading hardpoints and preparing for another night in the sky. Thanks for watching. This is States News.